the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Preoccupied with Tennessee recruiting over the next 2 weekends is that you got to recruit from last weekend. You only had a couple OV officials headlined by Josh Petty, and we'll see how that one unfolds ultimately because Florida State still gets him on campus last. But you get Jayden Loftin, who I think kind of caught some Tennessee fans by surprise. So a lot of people did not know who that was before that OV. And then it's like, oh, he's a 4-star. Oh, he could be a strong side defensive end. Oh, is this our Tyree Weathersby from up north in this cycle? Is that kind of what you're gathering from what you've seen thus far and how the staff sees Jayden Loftin as more of that strong side defensive end? Or do you think he's another potential Leo? What did the Vols get in Jayden Loftin?
Yeah, I think a really nice player. I spoke with someone who saw him at an Under Armour camp in New Jersey last month and said, hey, look, he's a good player and he's probably a little bit better than I thought before I saw him again at that camp. So I think this is a kind of a sneaky good pickup for Tennessee. I would agree that his future is probably at that 5 technique at the strong side defensive end position just because he's grown so much this offseason. His coach was telling me the other day he was 210, 215 last season, and he's already up to 250, and he's put in that much work in the weight room, and his body just kind of naturally doing that. So I think it tells you a couple of things. One, he's got the work ethic and the approach and mindset that this staff loves. I think he's a good culture fit in that way, and just a guy that's definitely not finished growing. You look at his frame; he's just a good sized kid that. It doesn't take a lot of projecting to say this kid's going to end up 270, 275, and probably have his hand on the ground every down. So, his coach was saying some schools that came through even said, we think he might be a 3 technique, defensive tackle on the road. So we'll see how much bigger he gets, but it wouldn't take much continued growth for him to outgrow that Leo spot. So I think he could play both, but it just depends on how much bigger he gets by next year, how much he continues to try to grow, or sometimes these guys, they get to a certain weight and they'll kind of put the brakes on themselves. I remember Derek Barnett, everyone in the world had him projected as a 3 technique years ago. He never got any bigger and actually got smaller, I think, from the time he arrived at Tennessee to the end of his college career. So you never know on things like that. But I would personally assume that the fact that Tennessee's already broached the topic of, hey, you could play some 5 technique too, that tells me they kind of had their sights set on playing him at that strong side defensive end position, at least in the future, if not right away.
And for reference, I think Caleb Herring he's up to like 250 now at Leo, right? But it took him to get to Tennessee where you have all these opportunities with food and diet and everything else and the strength training and like the facilities of an SEC school. Jayden Loftin hasn't played his senior year and he's at 250. So it's like there's just a lot of room for growth there. And I mean, when you look at past strong side defensive ends that Rodney Garner has pulled in here, Ryan, who does he remind you most of, like his frame right now when he was coming out of high school? Is it a Tyree Weathersby? Is it a Tyree West? Is it a Tyler Barron? Is it someone at the Leo spot? Who does he remind you the most of right now?
I think Weathersby is a good comparison because he at least in terms of build and skill set, he's a little bit taller, I think, than Weathersby maybe, but in that range. And that, someone that you can easily project as a 5 technique, but just has a little bit of versatility. And you kind of didn't know what Tyree Weathersby was going to be either. I'm as fascinated as a lot of people to see what he looks like this fall because he's still someone that, maybe in the future he grows to and can play multiple spots on the D-line. We don't really know what to expect from him, but he's certainly one of those strong side ends right now. But yeah, I would kind of compare him to that just in terms of current weight and build and skill set a little bit. That's not a bad comparison. And he does still have a little bit of that Leo skill set too, where again, you can't rule that out that if he just wanted to stay around 250, he certainly could and still be in the mix there. But yeah, you look at most of those Leos, James Pierce, Caleb Herring, Josh Josephs, they were closer to 210 coming out of high school in most cases than they were 250. So that's usually what you're looking for at that Leo spot. You want those guys to be really athletic. James Pierce was probably 225 his senior year. You're not wanting someone too much heavier than 230 usually going into his senior season. So those guys that are 250, it doesn't take much projecting. And guys like Rodney Garner, they've seen this enough. They've seen guys come in at 250 and end up, 290, 300 sometimes. I mean, they're expecting, I'm sure, some growth in the future. So I think Weathersby is a good comparison, but you just don't know. He's sort of a blank canvas because he could end up staying close to where he is now, or he could end up 280, 285 in a few years.
Either way, it's a sneaky important need because I think you have a lot of rotation options at strong side defensive end. You got to stay healthy on that side, but Tennessee is so loaded up with Leos that you've kind of been like, okay, well, we kind of need to see what that other side is going to look like. There's talent, but you want to see someone break through, and you kind of want to add a little bit more depth on that side because you just look at just how many Leos Tennessee is going to be able to rotate this year and next year that you kind of need to address the other side. So I think Jayden Loftin, like you talked about, it's like I think is going to be a really sneaky important addition to this class. Something that I think has popped up a little bit more, and I think maybe Tennessee fans struggle to see here a little bit, and I want to get your perspective on this, Ryan, is that like it looks like there's going to be a lot more corners than safeties in this class, but I think you see corner and you just assume this is just going to be a ton of corners for Willie Martinez. But I think there's possibilities that these guys move around. Like Hayward, if he's in this class, he might be a linebacker. He might be a safety. Like who in this class that you think Tennessee is in play for or is currently that currently has committed that is most likely to be able to make that move to safety because of just depth questions at Tennessee?
Yeah, I look at both Dylan Lewis and Tyler Redmond. To me, the two commitments. I think both of those guys have frames that, depending again, you just don't know how these guys are going to develop once they get into college. But Tyler Redmond, especially, he's a big framed kid.
Yeah. Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.